At 2 a.m., Ayanda Dlamini stood in the nursery, gently rocking her newborn daughter and whispering lullabies into the quiet. The house was still. Too still. Miles away, in an upscale florist shop in Des Moines, Derek Hayes held his phone to his ear, studying arrangements laid out before him.
Roses or peonies?
On the other end, Zinha Dlamini laughed softly, her voice bright with excitement. Whatever you want, baby, as long as she never finds out. Back in Little Rock, Ayanda shifted her 6-week-old daughter higher against her shoulder, pacing slowly.
Daddy's working late again.
Her voice faltered slightly on the word again.
But he loves us. He does.
Across town, in the Korean business district, a man sat in the shadows, watching a phone screen. Surveillance footage played in silence. Julian Park didn't blink as he studied the same house he'd been monitoring for weeks, the one where a woman sat alone night after night in a nursery meant for 2 parents. Ayanda didn't know what was happening around her. She thought the exhaustion was part of new motherhood, a traveling husband, the quiet pressure of holding everything together while he built their future. She didn't see the messages. The group chat where Zinha shared photos of wedding venues captioned, "He said yes, 2 weeks and it's done, she'll never even know." But someone else saw it, someone who didn't forget. Julian Park always settled his debts. What Ayanda didn't know yet was how deeply she was already tied to his. Welcome to K-Stories by Emma. Before we continue, please like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss any story. 3 months before the wedding, Ayanda made a decision that would quietly alter the course of her life. The emergency room at Baptist Health Medical Center in Little Rock was used to chaos, but that night felt different. The man on the gurney wasn't just injured, he carried a kind of presence that made people hesitate. Ayanda stood at the nurse's station, 8 months pregnant and deep into her 14th hour on shift, watching as the team worked around him. "No ID," the paramedic said, pulling off bloodied gloves. "Found him in an alley off Markham Street. Multiple stab wounds. Vitals are dropping." Dr. Caldwell stepped forward, then slowed. His attention shifted to the man's hands, tattoos curling across his knuckles and fingers, intricate and unmistakable. "Security flagged him," the charge nurse said under her breath. "High risk. No insurance confirmation. No consent forms. Protocol says we wait." "He's coding!" someone shouted. For a moment, the room held still. Ayanda saw the hesitation pass between them, the unspoken calculation, risk, liability, consequences. She had seen it before, the quiet line between doing what was right and doing what was safe. They saw the tattoos, the scars, the story they assumed those things told. Ayanda saw something simpler. He was dying, and no one was moving. Her hand instinctively rested on her swollen belly. She thought of her daughter, the one Derek said he couldn't wait to meet, though he had missed the last 3 ultrasounds. She thought about the kind of world she wanted that child to enter. Then she stepped forward. "I'll sign," she said. Dr. Caldwell turned sharply. "Nurse Delamy, you can't." "I can. Temporary medical responsibility. I'll take liability." Her supervisor, Rhonda Chen, caught her arm. "Ayanda, you're 8 months pregnant. This man is flagged. If something goes wrong, if he's connected to anything, this comes back on you." Ayanda gently pulled free. She walked to the desk, picked up the waiver, and signed her name, steady, deliberate. "He's someone's son," she said. The words lingered for a beat. Then everything moved at once. The man, Julian Park, was rushed into surgery. As they wheeled him away, his eyes opened briefly. Dark, focused, they locked onto her face with a sharp, unsettling clarity. Then the doors closed. Ayanda stood in the hallway, her hand still trembling, unsure what she had just set in motion. Later that night, Derek called. "Hey, babe." His voice was distant, layered with background noise, laughter, clinking glasses. "Hey," Ayanda replied, easing herself into the rocking chair in the nursery she had put together alone. "How's Des Moines?" "Busy. This client's demanding. I might need to extend the trip." A pause. "How are you feeling?" My feet are swelling. The doctor said I should stay off them more, but with these shifts. Yeah, that's tough. Listen, I've got to get back to this dinner meeting. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Derek, wait! The line went dead. Ayanda stared at her phone. At some point, she had stopped expecting him to call back. At some point, tomorrow had stopped meaning anything at all. She didn't tell him about the man she'd saved, about the waiver, about the way her supervisor had looked at her afterward. Part of her already knew how that conversation would go. He would call her reckless, emotional, too willing to carry what wasn't hers. The thought settled heavily, and it felt uncomfortably close to the truth. The next day, during rounds, Rhonda pulled her aside. "That patient you signed for," she said quietly, "he's awake, stable, and he's asking for you." Ayanda blinked. "For me? How would he even know?" "I don't know, but there are 3 security guards outside his room. Admin is involved. Whatever this is," Rhonda's voice tightened. "Be careful." Ayanda nodded. She could have left it there. She should have. But something, curiosity maybe, pulled her down the corridor. Room 347 sat at the end of the ICU wing. The guards outside shifted as she approached, alert but measured. One spoke quietly into a radio. Ayanda showed her badge. "He asked to see me." After a brief pause, they let her through. The room was dim, filled with the steady rhythm of monitors. Julian Park sat propped up in bed, bandaged but composed in a way that didn't quite match the injuries he had arrived with. His eyes found her immediately. "You signed for me," he said. Not a question. Ayanda nodded. Under his gaze, she felt oddly exposed. "People don't do that," he continued. "Not for someone like me." "I don't know what you mean," she said, though she did. "Yes, you do." The silence between them held that truth. "You were dying," Ayanda said. "That's all that mattered." Something in his expression shifted, subtle but real. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ayanda Dlamini." He repeated it slowly, carefully. "Thank you, Ayanda Dlamini." There was no exaggeration in his tone, no performance, just certainty. As she stepped out into the hallway, someone moved into her path. The woman was composed, sharply dressed, her gaze precise. "She wants your details," she said. Ayanda frowned slightly. "I already gave him my name. Your full name, contact information, where you work." She held a phone, ready. Ayanda hesitated. Every instinct told her to step away, but the woman's directness left little room for evasion. "Ayanda Nandi Dlamini. I work here, mostly labor and delivery." The woman typed quickly, then looked up. "I'm Minji Kang, Mr. Park's executive assistant." Her tone remained even. "He doesn't forget people who save him." Ayanda managed a small, polite smile. "That's good to know." Minji held her gaze for a moment longer. "And he doesn't forget people who hurt them either." The words landed quietly but with weight. Before Ayanda could respond, Minji turned and stepped back into the room, closing the door behind her. Ayanda stood there for a moment, her pulse quickening. She had acted on instinct, done what she believed was right. But as she walked away, one thought followed her. Some decisions don't end when they're made. They begin there. Derek Hayes was a man who knew how to make absence feel like ambition. 6 weeks after Kaya was born, Ayanda had started counting time differently. Not by milestones, first smile, first bath, first night sleeping longer than 3 hours, but by how many Derek missed. 3 weeks gone, 2 days home, packing again. "Atlanta," he said, folding dress shirts into his carry-on with quiet precision. "Big presentation for a new client." Ayanda sat on their bed, Kaya latched and nursing, watching her husband move through their bedroom like a guest checking out of a hotel. His phone lay face down on the nightstand. It had been face down for months now. "When will you be back?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Friday, maybe Saturday if things run long." The cities had begun to blur. Dallas, Charlotte, Memphis, Des Moines. Always another meeting, always another client who seemed to need him more than his newborn daughter did. Ayanda wanted to scream. Instead, she asked, "Have you eaten?" Derek paused, glanced at her like he'd forgotten she was there, then crossed the room. He kissed her forehead, Quick, automatic, already somewhere else, already in the Uber that would take him to the airport. "You're amazing, you know that?" he said. It sounded like gratitude. It felt like goodbye. After he left, the house settled into the silence Ayanda had come to expect. She stood in the kitchen, the one she'd painted sage green, the one where she'd installed open shelving by herself at 7 months pregnant, and felt the emptiness settle over her skin. The kitchen was hers, the nursery was hers, the mortgage payments, the grocery runs, the 2 a.m. feedings, all hers. Derek was just a name on the deed and a voice on the phone that always had somewhere else to be. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother in Des Moines. "How's Derek treating you, baby girl?" Ayanda typed, "He's never home." Deleted it. Typed, "I think something's wrong." Deleted it. Settled on, "He's working hard." The lie felt familiar, like something she'd been swallowing for months without realizing it even had a taste. Later that night, Ayanda scrolled through photos of Kaya, trying to choose the right one to send to her mother, her aunts, the family group chat that kept asking why Derek was never in any pictures. She found one from 2 weeks ago, Kaya in her bouncer, tiny fist wrapped around Ayanda's finger. Then she noticed it. In the background, barely visible, Derek's phone screen was lit, showing a selfie he'd posted to social media. The location tag read Dallas. The caption, "Grinding never stops. #business life." Ayanda zoomed in. Behind Derek's reflection in a window, there was a woman's hand, slender fingers, rings catching the light. One of them, a birthstone ring with a distinctive silver band, made Ayanda's blood run cold. She had bought that ring for Zinle last Christmas, custom made, engraved with their grandmother's initials on the inside. And when Zinle dropped it 3 weeks later, it chipped, a small imperfection along the stone's lower edge. Ayanda zoomed closer. The chip was there. Her hands began to shake. She told herself it was nothing. Lots of rings looked alike. The photo was grainy. She was tired, imagining things that weren't there. But Zinle hadn't answered her calls in 2 weeks, and Derek had said he was in Dallas alone. Ayanda opened her messages, fingers hovering over Zinle's name. Before she could type, a new message appeared. Unknown number. No words. Just a photo. The image loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, dragging its way into focus. Derek and Zinle, sitting in a restaurant booth, his hand resting on her lower back in a way that was too familiar, too easy. Her head leaned against his shoulder, smiling at something he'd said. The timestamp read, yesterday, 7:43 p.m. While Ayanda had been up with Kaya, pacing the nursery floor, singing lullabies to a daughter whose father was choosing appetizers with her aunt. Ayanda's phone slipped from her hand, hitting the hardwood floor with a sharp crack. In the nursery down the hall, Kaya started crying, sharp, insistent wails that demanded attention. Ayanda didn't move. She stood frozen in her kitchen, staring at the phone on the floor, the screen still glowing with proof of a betrayal so complete it reshaped her entire marriage. Her sister, her husband, together. And someone she didn't know, wanted her to see it. The question burning through her shock wasn't who sent the photo, it was how long they had been waiting for her to finally look. Zinle Delamini had spent her entire life in comparison to her older sister. Now she was taking the one thing Ayanda couldn't replace. 6 months earlier, Zinle arrived in Little Rock with 2 suitcases and a carefully chosen story about needing a fresh start. "I got laid off," she told Ayanda over the phone. Her voice balanced somewhere between embarrassment and quiet desperation. "I just need a few weeks to get back on my feet." Ayanda, 7 months pregnant and generous in the way she had always been, didn't hesitate. She offered the guest room immediately. "Stay as long as you need," she said, pulling Zinle into a hug at the door. "Family takes care of family." Zinle smiled. She said everything she was supposed to say, but underneath it there was only one thought. Finally. Back then, Derek was home more often, or at least he made it look that way. Zinle watched them closely, not out of curiosity, but with the patience of someone studying a lock. She noticed what Ayanda didn't, or perhaps chose not to, the way Derek's attention drifted when Ayanda talked about nursery colors or baby names, the way he found reasons to leave a room the moment she entered, the way his phone never left his hand, always tilted just out of view. Zinlei was 28, younger, unburdened, available in ways Ayanda, tired, pregnant, and focused on the life growing inside her, no longer was. She didn't chase him, she just made herself easier to choose. One night, while Ayanda was at a prenatal class learning breathing techniques she would later use alone, Zinlei found Derek on the back porch. He sat there with a beer, staring into the dark. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, lifting a bottle of wine. Derek gave a small shrug. "It's your sister's house." "It's your house, too," Zinlei said, pouring herself a glass as she took the seat beside him, close enough to matter, not close enough to raise questions. They talked about ordinary things, work, the weather, the Razorbacks' latest loss. Then, almost casually, Zinlei lowered her voice. "She doesn't appreciate you, you know." Derek's jaw tightened. He didn't argue. That was enough. Zinlei told herself it wasn't betrayal, it was balance. Ayanda had always had more talent, valedictorian, full scholarship, the daughter their mother praised to anyone who would listen. More stability, a good job, savings, a house she bought on her own. More respect, the reliable one, the one people leaned on, the one who stepped up after their father died. Derek, to Zinlei, wasn't a man, he was a correction. When he kissed her for the first time, it happened in Ayanda's kitchen, her back pressed against the counter Ayanda had saved months to afford. Zinlei didn't hesitate. She leaned in. An hour later, when Ayanda came home flushed from LeMay's class, asking if anyone wanted tea, Zinlei was at the table, smiling as she set out plates. Derek was upstairs. Nothing felt out of place. No one noticed. Present day. Zinlei stood before a three-way mirror at Bella's bridal boutique just outside Little Rock. She turned slightly, watching how the white satin dress followed her shape. It was perfect. $3,000. She would pay cash. Her phone buzzed. "Derek. She's asking about the photo. We need to move faster." Zinlei's jaw tightened. The wedding was 2 weeks away, too soon to make mistakes, too soon to lose control. She typed back quickly, "Handle it, I'm not the one who got sloppy." But her hands weren't steady. Because beneath everything, the confidence, the planning, Zinlei understood one thing clearly. Ayanda was smarter than both of them, and if she had started asking questions, then she was already closer than she should be. Zinlei smoothed the fabric over her waist, steadying herself. Just then, the boutique door chimed. A woman stepped inside, tall, composed, Korean, dressed in a black suit that likely cost more than Zinlei's car. Her eyes moved across the room with quiet precision. She passed Zinlei without a word, but her gaze lingered for a moment too long, just enough to leave a trace of unease. At the counter, the woman spoke softly to the consultant, too softly for Zinlei to hear. Then, without hesitation, she turned and left. The air shifted. When the consultant returned, her smile was still there, but thinner now, stretched at the edges. "I'm sorry, Ms. Delamini," she said. "That dress has been reserved for another client." Zinlei blinked, caught off guard. "What? I'm wearing it, and I'm paying cash." The smile didn't change. "It's not available." "I don't think you understand." "I understand perfectly." The warmth dropped from her voice. "The dress isn't for sale, to you." Outside, Zinlei fumbled with her keys, heat rising in her chest. The humiliation settled in slowly, sharp, and unwelcome. Across the lot, the Korean woman stood beside a sleek black sedan, phone held to her ear. When their eyes met through the glass, she didn't look away. She simply watched. Zinlei looked down, unlocking her car with unsteady hands before slipping inside. For the first time in a long while, her confidence cracked. Inside the boutique, the consultant picked up her phone. "It's done," she said. On the other end, Julian Park's voice was calm, controlled. "Good. Make sure she feels it." A brief pause. And the sister? The one who deserves better? The consultant glanced toward the window where Xinlei's car was already pulling away. She'll know soon enough, Julian said quietly. Make sure of that, too. The line went dead, and Xinlei, driving back toward the life she had taken, had no sense of how close everything was to closing in around her. Julian Park didn't believe in coincidences, and he didn't forget debts. 2 months after Ayanda saved his life, a bouquet arrived at Baptist Health Medical Center. White lilies, expensive, carefully arranged, left at the labor and delivery nurses' station with no name attached. The card read, "For the woman who saw a person, not a risk." Ayanda never knew who sent them. Julian did. He knew she'd received them because Julian made a point of knowing things. He had her looked into, not intrusively but thoroughly. Quiet, professional, the kind of background check that reveals what people try hard to keep hidden. He learned she was married, 8 months pregnant when she saved him, financially independent, carrying a mortgage on her own. Her husband's name was on the deed, but nowhere else. No bank accounts, no utility bills, no credit cards. He learned Derek Hayes claimed to work for a logistics company in Little Rock. It took 2 days to confirm the company didn't exist. Derek wasn't traveling for work. He was with Xinlei. Hotels in Memphis, restaurants in Dallas, weekend trips to cities Ayanda would never think to check, because she trusted him. Julian sat in his office in Little Rock's Korean business district, surrounded by men who feared him, men who knew what he was capable of, and felt something unfamiliar. Anger. Not the cold, deliberate kind he used in business, something sharper, protective, uncontrolled. He told himself it was about honor. She saved his life. He owed her, simple as that. But then he watched footage of her leaving the hospital after midnight, exhausted, alone, one hand pressed against her lower back as she made her way to a car with a broken taillight. Something in his chest tightened. She deserved better than this, better than a man who treated loyalty like it didn't matter. Tae-sung noticed the shift, the resources, the attention. "You're spending a lot on someone who doesn't know you exist," he said one evening from the doorway of Julian's office. Julian didn't look up. His eyes stayed on the file in front of him, Ayanda's file. "He will," he said. At first, the interventions were small, careful, impossible to trace. Her car, which had been failing her for months, was repaired overnight. When she called the mechanic, confused, he told her it had been covered under warranty. There was no warranty. Her hospital schedule eased without explanation. Her supervisor mentioned a request from upper management, but couldn't say who made it. Ayanda noticed she wasn't naive, but she was tired, and when something good happened, she didn't question it for long. Julian kept his distance, told himself he was settling a debt. That held until the night he saw them together. He was at the Capitol Hotel's restaurant, seated in a private corner, partially hidden behind decorative screens, when Derek and Xinlei walked in. They didn't see him. He saw everything. Derek's hand resting on Xinlei's thigh under the table. Xinlei's laugh, easy, careless, the kind of laugh that comes from believing you've already won. They were talking about the wedding. Fragments drifted across the room. 2 weeks and it's done. She won't even know until we're gone. Bali by the time she figures it out. Xinlei twirled her wineglass, smiling. She'll cry for a while, but she'll forgive me eventually. She always does. Julian's grip tightened around his whiskey glass. The crystal pressed into his palm. Across from him, Tae-sung went still. He'd seen Julian angry before. This was different. "Do we move?" he asked quietly. Julian set the glass down with deliberate care. "Yes," he said, "but not yet. I want her to see it first." Later that night, Julian sat alone in his office, his phone in hand. He opened the folder his team had built over the past month. Photos of Derek and Xinlei, financial records tying them together, extracted messages, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, everything. He could send it to Ayanda right then, end it before it went any further. But he didn't. She deserved more than fragments from a stranger. She deserved to see the truth herself, to face it on her terms. And when that moment came, he would make sure she wasn't alone. He sent a message to Minji. "Prepare the car and find out where they're holding the wedding." The reply came almost immediately. "Already located, Secret estate outside Little Rock, 2 weeks from Saturday. Julian looked at the image attached, the venue dressed in blush and gold, ready for a ceremony built on something hollow. He typed one more message. When it happens, I want to be there. Minji responded at once. Understood. Julian set his phone aside and looked over the city lights. Ayanda didn't know it yet, but her world was about to break apart. Ayanda Delamy had always trusted her ability to think clearly, to stay grounded in logic. But denial has its own quiet language, and a heart speaks it fluently. She sat on her bedroom floor, her phone trembling in her hands, eyes fixed on the photo. Derek and Zinlei, tucked into a restaurant booth, his hand resting on her back, her head leaning into his shoulder, and there, in the corner, the timestamp. Yesterday. There had to be another explanation. Maybe the photo was old. Maybe it had been altered. Maybe this was just her mind, unsettled by postpartum hormones, twisting something ordinary into something it wasn't. She typed a message to Zinlei. We need to talk. No reply. She called Derek. Voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. At 11 p.m., her phone finally buzzed. Derek. In a meeting. What's wrong? Her fingers hovered over the screen. She typed, Are you cheating on me? She stared at the words, then erased them. Instead, she wrote, When are you coming home? She pressed send. 30 seconds later, Friday, love you. The words landed flat, empty, like habit, not truth. Still, she wanted to believe them. She had built her entire adult life on that belief. That night, after Kaya finally drifted to sleep, Ayanda did something she had never done before. She went through Derek's things. The nightstand drawer he assumed she ignored, the laptop charging on the kitchen counter, the email account still open on the tablet he'd left behind. Piece by piece, the fragments came together. Hotel receipts, Memphis, Dallas, Atlanta, cities he had called business trips. Dinners for two at places she didn't recognize, jewelry purchases, expensive ones that had never reached her, and then, hidden inside a folder labeled Taxes 2023, she found it. A marriage license application. Derek Hayes and Zinlei Delamy. Date of ceremony, 2 weeks from today. Her hands went numb, the paper slipped from her grip, drifting to the floor like something final. She didn't scream, didn't throw anything, didn't reach for her phone. Instead, she walked into Kaya's nursery, lifted her gently from the crib, and settled into the rocking chair. Silent, shaking, holding the only person in her life who hadn't lied to her. The next morning, Ayanda called in sick for the first time in 3 years. She sat at the kitchen table, the marriage license laid out in front of her like evidence, and waited. For clarity. For anger, for something to break through the numbness that made even breathing feel heavy. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Another photo. Derek and Zinlei stood at a wedding venue, an elegant estate with white columns and perfectly kept gardens. Zinlei wore white. Derek's arm rested around her waist. They looked happy. Below the image, a single message. You deserve to see this for yourself. Her pulse quickened. She typed back, Who is this? The reply came almost immediately. Someone who owes you. The pieces clicked into place. The flowers, the car repair, the sudden shift changes. Why are you helping me? She asked. Because no one else is. Before she could make sense of that, the front door opened. Zinlei walked in, keys jingling lightly, balancing takeout bags, smiling as if nothing had changed. Hey sis, she said, I brought lunch from that Thai place you love. You look terrible. Are you okay? Ayanda looked at her. At the sister she had raised after their father died, the one she had comforted through nightmares, helped with homework, supported through school when their mother couldn't. The sister she had trusted, with her home, her husband, her life. And for the first time, she didn't see family. She saw a stranger wearing a familiar face. I'm fine, Ayanda said softly, slipping her phone into her pocket. The marriage license remained on the table between them. Then, steady and measured, she added, "Actually, I need to talk to you about something." Zinle's smile flickered, just for a moment, but it was enough. In that brief slip, Ayanda saw it clearly. Her sister already knew exactly what this conversation was about. Some truths don't destroy relationships. They simply expose what was already broken. Ayanda slid the marriage license across the kitchen table. Zinli's smile held, then faltered. For 3 seconds, the mask slipped. Raw panic flashed across her face before she pulled herself back together, settling into a careful, practiced confusion. "What is this?" she asked. Ayanda didn't blink. "You tell me." Zinli picked up the paper, scanning it as if seeing it for the first time. Then she laughed. Too loud, too sharp. A stall. "This is insane. Where did you even get this? Someone's messing with you, Ayanda. This has to be—" "Don't." Ayanda's voice cut clean through it. "Don't you dare gaslight me right now." Silence settled over the room. Zinli's eyes narrowed. And then something shifted. Like a switch flipping, the performance disappeared. "Fine," she said, her tone flattening as she tossed the paper back onto the table. "You want the truth? Yes, Derek and I are together. Yes, we're getting married. And honestly, Ayanda, can you really blame him?" Something cracked inside Ayanda's chest. Not surprise. Something heavier than that. Confirmation. "How long?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Zinli shrugged, almost indifferent. "Does it matter? 6 months? 7? She glanced at her. "Look at yourself. You're exhausted, boring. Every conversation is about the baby, or bills, or what color to paint the bathroom. When was the last time you made him feel wanted?" Ayanda's vision blurred. "I was pregnant. I had his child." Zinli let out a short, bitter laugh. "And he needed someone who wasn't falling apart. I gave him that. I gave him what you couldn't." The cruelty wasn't loud. It was measured, familiar, like she'd said it before. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Zinli had chosen this. "Get out," Ayanda said. Zinli didn't move. "This is my house, too. You invited me here, remember?" Ayanda stood. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. "Get out." Zinli's smile sharpened. "Or what, you'll call Derek? He's not going to choose you, Ayanda. He already didn't." The words hit hard. But instead of folding, something inside Ayanda shifted, hardened, turned cold. "You're right," she said. "He didn't choose me. But that's not the loss you think it is." Zinli hesitated, just for a moment. "What does that mean?" Ayanda stepped closer. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet, final. "It means I'm done. With him, with you, with pretending this family is something it isn't." For the first time, Zinli looked unsure. "You're bluffing," she said. "You won't divorce him. You have a baby. You need him." Ayanda let out a hollow laugh. "I've been raising Kaya alone since the day she was born. Derek leaving changes nothing, except the lies I tell myself." She pulled out her phone, opened the message thread from the unknown number, and typed, "I want to see the wedding. Can you make that happen?" The reply came almost instantly. "Already arranged. Saturday, 4 p.m. I'll send a car." Ayanda looked up, her expression steady, almost unreadable. "You want him? You can have him." She walked past her, lifted Kaya from the bassinet, and left the room. Zinli stayed where she was, frozen in the kitchen. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Derek. Did she find out? She stared at the screen, her fingers trembling. For the first time in 6 months, fear settled in. Because Ayanda wasn't crying, she wasn't begging, she wasn't breaking. She was planning. Saturday arrived without ceremony, but there was no mistaking it. By mid-afternoon, everything about the day felt charged, like something long set in motion had finally reached its point. At 3:30 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled up outside Ayanda's home. The driver stepped out first, then Minji, impeccable as ever in a tailored black suit, her expression hidden behind designer sunglasses. Ayanda stood at the front door with Kaya secured against her chest. She hadn't slept in 2 days. barely eaten, toast and coffee, nothing more. Still, she had dressed with care, a sleek black dress fitted close to her postpartum body, her hair pulled into a tight bun, makeup restrained but exact. She looked like she was attending a funeral. In a way, she was. Minji opened the rear door without speaking. Ayanda got in, and found Julian Park waiting. He hadn't changed, the same dark, watchful eyes, tattooed hands resting loosely on his knees, that quiet, contained presence that seemed to thicken the air around him. Inside the car, it felt even stronger. "Ms. Delamy," he said, his voice calm, his accent shaping each word with care. "I'm glad you agreed to this." Ayanda held his gaze, her pulse unsteady. "Who are you?" His expression didn't shift. "Someone who doesn't forget debts." The car eased forward, leaving the neighborhood behind as it moved toward the outskirts of Little Rock. Julian spoke along the way. Not everything, he chose his words too carefully for that, but enough. He told her about the night she saved him, about the months that followed, recovery, quiet observation, learning her name, watching her life from a distance, deliberate and controlled. "I don't interfere in people's lives," he said, "but you gave me mine back, and what I saw—" his jaw tightened slightly. "No one should be treated the way he's treated you." Ayanda swallowed. "You've been watching me?" "I've been protecting you," Julian replied, meeting her eyes without hesitation. "There's a difference." She should have felt alarm, anger, the instinct to push back, to question everything. Instead, there was only exhaustion, and beneath it, something quieter, something unfamiliar. Relief. "Why?" she asked. His answer came without pause. "Because you deserved someone too." The road shifted from asphalt to gravel. Trees thinned, opening onto wide, manicured grounds. The estate came into view, sprawling, elegant, dressed in blush and gold. Guests moved easily across the lawn, dressed in soft pastels, champagne glasses catching the late afternoon light. They had no idea what was about to unfold. Ayanda's hands trembled where they rested in her lap. Julian noticed. "You don't have to go in," he said. "I can handle this for you." She turned to him. This man, still a stranger in every practical sense, had shown her more care in 2 months than her husband had in 2 years. "No," she said. "Steady now. I need to see it." He gave a small nod. "Then I'll be right behind you." When the car stopped, Minji was already at her side, holding out a manila envelope. "Evidence," she said. "Photos, financial records, witness statements, everything you need." Ayanda hesitated before taking it. "What am I supposed to do with this?" Minji's expression softened just slightly. "Whatever you want, but Mr. Park thought you'd want the truth to be undeniable." Ayanda opened the envelope. The contents spilled into her hands. Photographs. Derek and Zinley. Restaurants, hotel lobbies, private rooms. His hand resting on her thigh, her lips against his neck. Each image stamped, dated, impossible to dispute. Receipts for jewelry, transcripts of messages she couldn't believe existed, let alone had been obtained. And then, at the bottom, a document. Ayanda froze. A prenuptial agreement for Derek's marriage to Zinley. Her eyes moved to a single clause. Clause 12. Plans to contest custody of Kaya Delimi on grounds of maternal instability. Everything inside her went still. Beside her, Julian's voice dropped, quiet and edged with something dangerous. "He was going to take your daughter." The words didn't land all at once. They pressed in, slow and suffocating. Ayanda couldn't breathe, couldn't think past it. Julian's hand rested briefly on her shoulder, firm, grounding. "Not anymore," he said. "I promise you, not anymore." She lifted her gaze to the estate, to the white tent where her husband was preparing to marry her sister while planning to take her child, and something shifted. For the first time in months, the helplessness was gone. In its place, fury. Cold, focused, unyielding. Ayanda closed the envelope. "Let's go." The ceremony was already underway when Ayanda Dlamini walked in, straight into what felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. The tent glowed in soft blush and gold. At the altar, Derek stood in a tailored navy suit, every inch the devoted groom. Zinlei moved down the aisle in a white dress that cost more than Ayanda's mortgage, her smile bright but empty. Guests watched, murmuring their approval. No one noticed the woman entering quietly at the back. Black dress, baby strapped to her chest, eyes sharp, fractured. The officiant began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Ayanda stepped forward, calm, measured. A few heads turned, then more. Whispers spread, low and quick. Derek saw her. Recognition hit first, then something closer to fear. Zinlei stopped mid-step, her bouquet trembled. The officiant faltered into silence. Ayanda reached the front and spoke, her voice steady, cutting clean through the air. "Don't stop on my account." For a moment, nothing moved. Then everything did. Derek stepped toward her, his expression shifting too fast to settle. "Ayanda, what are you— This isn't— You can't just—" She raised a hand. He stopped, because the woman standing in front of him wasn't the one he'd left behind, not the exhausted, pleading wife. This version of Ayanda was composed, still, unyielding. "You're right," she said, her voice carrying across the tent. "This isn't what it looks like. It's exactly what it is." She turned to the guests. "My name is Ayanda Dlamini. I'm Derek's wife, legally, currently, as of this morning." She held up her phone, the marriage certificate clear on the screen. "And this," she gestured toward Zinlei, whose face had gone pale, "is my sister, the one I raised, the one I put through college, the one I trusted with my home." The reaction rippled outward, sharp inhales, stunned silence. Derek tried to steady himself. "This is a misunderstanding. Ayanda, if you'd just calm down." "Misunderstanding?" Her laugh was brief, hollow. She reached into her bag, pulled out a manila envelope, and handed photos to the nearest guests. Each one spoke for itself. "You started this 6 months ago, while I was pregnant with your daughter. You used our joint account for hotel rooms. You bought her an engagement ring with a credit card in my name." She placed one photo directly into Vanessa Hayes' mother, Derek's mother, the same woman who once called her daughter. Vanessa's face crumpled as she looked down. Ayanda turned to Zinlei. Tears streamed down her sister's face, perfectly placed, carefully performed. "And you," Ayanda said, quieter now but sharper for it. "You asked me to be your maid of honor last month. You held my daughter. You sat at my table and ate my food while planning this?" Zinlei opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Before anyone could step in, Julian Park entered the tent. He didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. Something in the room shifted. A few guests recognized him immediately, their reactions subtle but unmistakable. Derek glanced over, irritation flickering. "Who the hell?" Julian ignored him. He walked straight to Ayanda and stopped just behind her, steady, deliberate. "You wanted everyone to see," he said quietly. "They're seeing." Ayanda gave a small nod. Then she took out one last document, the prenuptial agreement, and handed it to Vanessa. "He was planning to take Kaya from me. Clause 12. Read it." Vanessa's hands trembled as she scanned the page. When she looked up, it wasn't confusion on her face anymore. It was something closer to disbelief. "Derek, tell me this isn't real." He said nothing. That was enough. Zinlei moved suddenly, not toward Ayanda, but toward the documents, reaching to snatch them away. Julian reacted faster. He caught her wrist, not forcefully, just enough. "I wouldn't," he said, his tone even. She pulled back, stumbling slightly in her dress. At the edge of the tent, security appeared, not the venue's, Julian's. Ayanda looked at Zinlei one last time. "You wanted him? He's yours. But you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you destroyed a family for a man who was already planning to leave you." Then she turned and walked out. Julian followed without a word. Behind them, the ceremony unraveled, voices rising, accusations spilling over, Zinlei's sobs cutting through it all. Ayanda didn't look back. Outside, the air felt different, too open, too quiet. She stopped, her balance slipping for a moment. Julian's hand came to her elbow, light, steady. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Your sister just made a very stupid mistake." Freedom, Ayanda realized, didn't feel like relief. It felt like falling. In the car, she said nothing. Kaya slept quietly against her chest, unaware that everything around them had just broken apart and reshaped itself. Julian didn't try to fill the silence. He let her have it. As the adrenaline faded, exhaustion settled in, heavy, consuming. Ayanda felt like she might sink straight into the leather seat. "I can't go home," she said at last, her voice low. Julian nodded. "I know. I've arranged a place for you. Temporary. Safe. It's yours for as long as you need." She should have questioned him, pushed back. This man was still, in many ways, a stranger making decisions that affected her life. But she didn't have the strength. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Julian's gaze didn't waver. "Because you stood up when everyone else stepped back. I don't forget that." The house sat on the outskirts of Little Rock, private, modest, secured behind gates and cameras Ayanda chose not to focus on. Inside, everything was already in place. Minji had stocked the kitchen, formula, diapers, fresh groceries. A nursery had been set up with quiet care, crib, changing table, rocking chair. On the dining table, neat stacks of documents waited: divorce papers, custody filings, restraining order templates. Ayanda stood there, taking it in, the precision of it all almost too much to process. "You don't have to decide anything tonight," Julian said from the doorway, "but when you're ready, you won't be doing it alone." She turned to him, still trying to understand how someone she barely knew had shown her more loyalty than her own family. "I don't know how to thank you." For a moment, his expression softened, just slightly. "You already did, 3 months ago, in a hospital." And then he left. That night, her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. "Derek, we need to talk. This isn't what you think. You're making a mistake. Zinlei, you humiliated me. I'll never forgive you. You always had to be the victim." Others followed. Friends, relatives, people she hadn't heard from in years. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone wanted answers. Ayanda turned the phone off. In the quiet of that unfamiliar house, she sat still, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel the need to explain herself. By morning, an envelope had been slipped under the door. Inside were legal documents. Derek had already filed for divorce, framing it as abandonment, positioning himself as the one wronged. But attached to his filing was a note from Julian's legal team. "We anticipated this. Counter-filing ready and submitted. Superior evidence attached. He won't win." Ayanda lowered herself to the floor, papers spread around her. It struck her then, something that should have unsettled her. Julian had been ahead of all of this, not deciding for her, making sure she could decide for herself. Later that afternoon, her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Ms. Delamy, this is Detective Lorraine Grant with the Little Rock Police Department. We need to speak with you about Zinlei Delamy." Ayanda's grip tightened. "What about her?" The detective's tone remained steady. "She's been arrested. Assault, destruction of property, threatening behavior toward venue staff and guests." Ayanda frowned, trying to catch up. "I don't understand." "There's more," the detective said after a pause. "During booking, your sister made some concerning statements about you and your daughter, specific threats we can't ignore." The words seemed to blur. "What kind of threats?" Ayanda asked. "That's what we need to discuss, in person. Can you come to the station?" Ayanda looked over at Kaya, asleep in her carrier, untouched by any of it. "Yes," she said quietly. "I'll be there." She ended the call and stared at her phone. Then slowly she exhaled, wondering just how far her sister was willing to go. Rage, when it has nowhere to go, turns inward. Zinlei's didn't. At the Little Rock Police Department, Detective Lorraine Grant led Ayanda into a stark interview room and walked her through what had happened after she left the wedding. Zinlei had exploded. In front of 40 stunned guests, she'd gone after Derek, screaming that he had promised her Ayanda would never find out, that this was supposed to be her day, her victory. Tables were overturned, centerpieces smashed, champagne glasses thrown at anyone who tried to step in. When venue security finally restrained her, the outburst didn't stop. She made threats against Ayanda, against Kaya, specific ones, detailed enough that they couldn't be brushed off as emotion. Ayanda sat across from the detective, numb. "She's my sister." Grant's expression softened, but her tone didn't. "She's also dangerous right now. We're recommending a mandatory psychiatric evaluation and a restraining order for you and your daughter." Ayanda signed the paperwork. Her hands didn't quite steady. As Grant escorted her toward the exit, she hesitated. "Off the record," she said, lowering her voice. "Your sister said something during booking. She claimed powerful people set her up, that the evidence came together too quickly, too perfectly." Ayanda felt it immediately, a drop in her stomach. Grant watched her closely. "I don't know what that means, but if there's something I should know." Ayanda held her gaze. "My sister made her own choices. She's dealing with the consequences." It wasn't entirely untrue. Grant gave a slow nod. "Fair enough, but Ms. Delamy, be careful. People with that kind of reach, they don't do favors for free." Outside, Julian was waiting, leaning against his car, phone in hand, calm in a way that didn't quite fit the situation. Ayanda approached him. She should have been angry, should have demanded answers. Instead, she asked quietly, "Did you?" Julian didn't pretend. "I made sure her actions were documented. I didn't make her do them." Ayanda searched his face. "That's not an answer." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Your sister was preparing to file for emergency custody of Kaya. She planned to claim you were unstable, unfit. Derek was ready to support her. I simply moved things along." Ayanda's hands tightened. "You should have told me." Julian held her gaze. "Would you have let me help if I had?" The question lingered. There was no easy answer. Her phone rang. Derek. She answered and placed it on speaker. His voice came through fast, unsteady. "Ayanda, please, we need to talk. Zinlei's lost it. She's saying things that aren't true. I never wanted this. I made a mistake, but we can fix." Julian took the phone from her hand. "She's done talking to you," he said, his voice flat and cold. There was a pause. Then Derek again, sharper now. "Who the hell is this?" "Someone who keeps his promises. You're going to sign the divorce papers, you're going to waive custody, and you're going to stay out of her life." A bitter laugh. "Or what? You don't want to find out." Julian ended the call. The silence that followed carried its own weight. Ayanda stared at him, her pulse quickening. "You can't threaten him for me," she said, but even to her own ears it didn't sound certain. Julian handed her phone back. "I just did, and he'll listen. Men like Derek understand one thing: power. He thought he had it. He doesn't." She should have been afraid of him, of how easily he stepped in, how precisely he moved things into place. Instead, she asked, "What do you want from me?" Julian didn't hesitate. "Nothing you're not ready to give." Some wounds don't close. They change shape, becoming something you learn to carry. 3 weeks slipped by, quiet and unsteady. Derek signed the divorce papers. They came through Julian's attorneys. No argument, no conversation, just a signature. Zinlei was released after psychiatric evaluation, but the restraining order remained. No contact, no exceptions. Ayanda moved through her days in a muted haze, feeding Kaya, sleeping in fragments, existing somewhere between relief and loss, without fully settling into either. Julian stayed away, but never completely. Groceries would show up at her door, legal updates came through Minji's careful, measured emails. Every few days, a simple message: "You're not alone." Ayanda didn't know what to do with that. She had spent so long being unseen that now, being noticed, truly seen, felt almost unbearable, like standing in a light she didn't know how to step out of. One evening, Julian came to her door. He didn't knock twice, didn't push, just stood there, hands in his pockets, his expression difficult to read. "You haven't left this house in 2 weeks," he said. Ayanda shifted Kaya on her hip. "I'm fine." "You're surviving. That's not the same thing." Something in her chest gave way. "I don't know how to do this, how to be alone." Julian's tone softened. "You're not alone. You have Kaya. You have people who care." She let out a quiet breath. "I have a stranger who saved me." He stepped a little closer. "I'm not a stranger anymore." After a moment, Ayanda moved aside and let him in. They settled in the living room. Kaya lay between them on a colorful mat, reaching clumsily for her toys, absorbed in her own small world. Julian watched her, something gentler in his expression. The sharp edges of him seemed to ease. "You're good with her," Ayanda said. A faint smile touched his face, rare but real. "I have nieces in Korea. I understand small humans." It was the most he'd ever shared about himself. Ayanda studied him, then asked, "Why did you really help me? And don't say debt." For a while, he didn't answer. His gaze stayed on Kaya's tiny hands, her uneven movements. "When I woke up in that hospital," he said finally, "I didn't expect to survive. I'd already accepted dying." His voice lowered, steadier than the words themselves. "And then there was you, exhausted, pregnant. You had no reason to care, but you did. You saw me, not what I do, not who I'm tied to, just me." He looked up at her. No one had done that in a long time. Ayanda felt something inside her shift, a quiet crack in a wall she hadn't realized was there. "I'm not ready," she said, "for anything complicated." Julian nodded. "I know, I'm not asking you to be, but when you are ready, for friendship, for trust, for whatever comes next, I'll be here." The words settled between them, delicate but steady. Ayanda hesitated, then reached out. Her hand hovered for a moment before resting lightly on his. Julian's breath caught. He turned his palm upward, letting her fingers settle into his. No pressure, no expectation, just the warmth of contact. "Thank you," she said softly. His thumb brushed across her knuckles once, barely there, but enough. "You don't have to thank me for doing what's right." They stayed like that for a while, hands loosely linked, Kaya cooing between them. And for the first time in what felt like a long while, Ayanda felt it, something small but unmistakable. Hope. Then Julian's phone buzzed. The shift was immediate. His expression hardened as he read the screen. Ayanda felt the unease before she spoke. "What is it?" He stood, the softness gone, replaced by something controlled and dangerous. "Derek," he said. "He's filed an appeal on the custody ruling, and he's hired Preston Vale, one of the most expensive family law attorneys in Arkansas." Cold spread through her. "He can't. We signed—" "Legal agreements don't stop desperate men," Julian cut in, his jaw tightening. "But neither do threats." Ayanda stood, her pulse rising. "What are you going to do?" He looked at her, and this time there was no softness left to soften the truth of him. "Whatever I need to." Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it shows up as a quiet conversation in a parking garage. Julian chose neutral ground, a private dining room at the Capitol Hotel. Minji and Taesung were there as witnesses. Derek arrived 40 minutes late. He wasn't alone. Preston Vale walked in beside him, polished and precise, a $5,000 attorney known for dismantling mothers in custody battles. They took their seats across from Julian, as if this were a negotiation between equals. Derek leaned back, a trace of smugness in his expression. "You think you scare me? I know who you are, and I know you can't touch me without exposing yourself." Julian didn't react. "You're right, I can't, but I don't need to." He slid a manila folder across the table. Vale opened it, the color drained from his face. Inside was everything. Evidence of Derek's financial crimes, embezzlement from his employer, a logistics company that existed, just not the way Derek claimed, fraudulent business filings, 3 years of tax evasion. "Where did you—" Vale began, but the question fell apart halfway through. Julian's voice remained steady. "Doesn't matter. What matters is that the IRS receives this tomorrow morning, unless you withdraw your custody claim tonight. Derek shot forward, lunging across the table. Taesung moved first, one hand pressed firmly onto Derek's shoulder, forcing him back into his seat with quiet, controlled strength. "You can't do this," Derek hissed. Julian leaned in slightly, his voice lower now, sharper. "I can, and I will, because you made this about hurting her, and I don't allow that." Something shifted. Derek's confidence cracked just enough to show what was underneath. "She means that much to you?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. It settled heavily in the space between them. Vale cleared his throat, uneasy. "Mr. Hayes, I strongly advise you to comply." Derek didn't look away from Julian. The anger in his eyes had nowhere to go. He knew he had lost. "Fine, I'll withdraw, but this isn't over." Julian stood, adjusting his jacket with deliberate calm. "Yes, it is." Julian returned to Ayanda's home late that night. She was already waiting, pacing the living room. Upstairs, Kaya slept. Ayanda's face was tight with worry. "Is it done?" she asked as soon as he stepped inside. Julian nodded once. He withdrew. "You're safe." Relief hit her first, then something sharper. "What did you do?" "What was necessary?" "Julian!" "He was going to take your daughter," he said, cutting in, "with lies, with manipulation, with money. I stopped him. That's all you need to know." But she shook her head, the frustration rising now. "No, I need to know what you risked, what you exposed, because this isn't just about me anymore. It's about you protecting me in ways that could destroy you." Julian stepped closer. For the first time, the control he carried so carefully began to slip. "Do you think I care?" His voice was rough, unguarded. "Do you think anything matters more than making sure you and Kaya are safe?" Ayanda's breath caught. "Julian." Julian spent his entire life calculating risk, weighing consequences, building walls. His hands tightened at his sides. "And then you walked into my life and signed a piece of paper that said I mattered, that I was worth saving." He held her gaze. "So yes, I'm protecting you, and no, I won't apologize for it." The words lingered, heavy with everything he wasn't used to saying out loud. Ayanda's eyes filled, not with sadness, but with something deeper, recognition. Before she could respond, her phone rang. "Minji." Julian answered. As he listened, his expression hardened. Understood. He ended the call and turned back to Ayanda. "Derek's lawyer just filed a complaint with the Arkansas Bar Association against me. Intimidation, coercion, criminal threats." Ayanda felt the shift instantly. "Can they? They can investigate, and if they dig deep enough—" He didn't finish. He didn't have to. The reality settled in all at once. Julian had exposed himself to protect her, and now he was vulnerable in ways she couldn't fix. "What do we do?" she asked quietly. Julian's smile was faint, but there was nothing soft about it. "We prepare for war." The investigation into Julian moved quickly, faster than either of them expected. Within days, federal agents were at his offices asking sharp, deliberate questions about his business, his connections, the anonymous tips that had somehow found their way to them. Julian handled it the way he handled everything: calm, controlled, unreadable. But Ayanda could see it, the small fractures beneath the surface. He was taking the weight of it all on himself, protecting her, even if it meant risking everything he built. She couldn't let that happen. So Ayanda made a decision. She reached out to Preston Vale directly, ignoring Julian's clear instructions not to. They met in a quiet coffee shop in downtown Little Rock. Vale arrived with the same air she expected, smug, dismissive, already certain of his position. "Miss Dlamini, to what do I owe this?" "I want to make a deal," Ayanda cut in, her voice steady. "I'll testify that Julian never threatened Derek, that everything was legal. I'll sign whatever affidavit you need." Vale studied her, his expression shifting with interest. "In exchange for what?" "You drop the bar complaint, and Derek stays away from me and my daughter, permanently." He laughed. It was sharp, almost amused. Why would I agree to that when I can destroy your protector and still take your daughter? Ayanda leaned forward, her voice calm, precise. Because I have evidence, too, of Derek's crimes, the ones Julian gave a chance to walk away from. I'll send everything to the IRS, the FBI, and every news outlet in Arkansas. Your client goes to prison, and you'll be the lawyer who stood beside him. The smile faded from Vale's face. You're bluffing. Ayanda slid a USB drive across the table. Try me. His hand hovered over it, and in that moment, something shifted. He saw it, the truth he hadn't expected. She wasn't the version of her Derek had described, not broken, not desperate. This was a woman who had rebuilt her life from nothing, who had acted without hesitation when it mattered, who had faced betrayal and kept going. Vale picked up the drive. I'll be in touch, he said quietly. When Ayanda got home, Julian was already there, waiting. His expression said everything. What did you do? Minji had told him. Of course she had. Ayanda met his gaze without hesitation. What you would have done for me. That's different. Why? She cut in. Because you're allowed to sacrifice yourself and I'm not? Julian's jaw tightened. Because I can handle the consequences. She stepped closer, her voice firm. So can I. You don't get to protect me and then pretend I'm fragile. I'm not. I never was. You saw that before anyone else did. Don't stop now. The words landed harder than she intended. Julian stared at her, taking it in. This woman who had endured more than most, who had rebuilt herself piece by piece, who stood in front of him now without hesitation. You could have walked away, he said, quieter now, from all of this, from me. I don't want to. She didn't hesitate, not even for a second. Something in the room shifted. Julian closed the space between them, his hand lifting to her face with a gentleness that didn't match anything else about him. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, how to be soft. Ayanda placed her hand over his, her thumb brushing lightly across the ink on his knuckles. Then we'll figure it out together. 3 months later, the bar complaint was gone. Derek, now facing federal charges, fled the country. Xinlei completed her mandated therapy and returned to Des Moines. There was no contact, on either side. Some things, once broken, stay that way. Ayanda's divorce was finalized. She stood in Julian's office, no longer unfamiliar, as Minji handed her the final documents. You're free, Minji said, offering a rare smile. Ayanda glanced at Julian. He was watching her, steady as always. Not free, she said softly, just choosing better. Julian walked over as Kaya, now 9 months old, reached for him, laughing. He picked her up carefully, almost instinctively, and Ayanda felt something settle in her chest as she watched him. This man who could be so dangerous, holding her daughter like she was something fragile and irreplaceable. What now? He asked. Ayanda smiled. Not guarded, not careful, just real. Now we build something new. No lies, no shadows, just us. Julian echoed the word, almost testing it. Us. He didn't seem to mind how it sounded. Ayanda stepped closer, resting her hand over his heart. You saved me, she said quietly. Julian shook his head, leaning his forehead against hers. No, you saved me first. I just returned the favor. And in that moment, standing at the edge of everything she had left behind, Ayanda Delani made her choice. Not rescue, partnership. Not dependence, strength meeting strength. This story doesn't end with a wedding, it ends with a beginning, and as she watched Julian make Kaya laugh with exaggerated expressions, Ayanda realized something simple and certain. That was more than enough. Thank you for joining K-Stories by Emma for this incredible journey. If you loved this story, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything. Until next time, believe in love, fight for what matters, and never give up on redemption. This is Emma, signing off.